Aloha and welcome to the TD Food Group Employee Safety and Health Orientation. My name is Tracy Lawson. I'll be your host for this course. TD Food Group is required by the Hawaii Occupational Safety and Health Administration to have a written safety management system. This orientation is a brief overview of the contents of that management system and just some information to help ensure that our employees understand how important their safety and health is to us and that we maintain a workplace that's free from recognized and predictable hazards. One very important takeaway from this orientation is that we sincerely believe that nothing we do is worth getting hurt, and we'll accept nothing less than job performance that's both safe and efficient. Let's start off with the Safety and Health Management Policy Statement. Every organization is required by law to have one of these, and this really sets the tone and the direction and the foundation for all the policies, programs, and procedures that are contained in the safety management system. So let's take a look through and make sure we understand what's included in this statement. TD Food Group, which is a subsidiary of Restaurant Brands Hawaii Limited, is committed to occupational safety and health as their core business value. That's an important statement. Because of this, they expect all personnel involved in operations to be prompt and diligent in exercising their duty and authority to prevent, detect, and correct hazardous conditions and behaviors. Those are three important words: prevent, detect, and correct. And that's really something that every employee can carry forward, looking for hazards, finding them, and correcting them. TD Food Group believes that safety is a shared responsibility, and we can achieve exemplary results through complete cooperation between management and employees. This is so important that management immediately responds to issues and employees immediately report issues. It's a kako thing. Each person's expected to place safety as at the highest priority and adopt and promote this plan, do, check, act process. So we plan our work for the day, we do our work according to the plan, which hopefully includes performing that work safely. We check to see are things going as we planned, and we take action if something's not exactly as we planned it and maybe there's an unsafe condition. We then report it and correct it. So it's a process. The other important concept is to display zero tolerance for conditions that aren't safe or behaviors that aren't safe, or another way to say that is non-conforming, not in compliance with the requirements. It's the responsibility of every company who works with TD Food Group and every person working with us to ensure the personnel who work under their control are equipped with knowledge, skills, and attitudes to pre-plan safety into their work processes and then safely perform those tasks in compliance with the law. So another three important words here in this paragraph are knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Those are the three things that we need to have safe behavior. You have to understand what the requirements are. You have to have the ability to carry out those tasks safely. And then the attitude to understand and prioritize that it's important you go home safely to your family every day. And it's important that we provide an environment that's safe to our patrons and to our customers. It's also the responsibility of each person to fully participate in this health and safety management system. Again, to protect yourself and to protect others. So how do we do this? At minimum, we have 5 things that we're going to talk about. Have a sense of urgency for safety and health concerns and respond immediately to issues observed or brought to your attention. Not only is this really important for TD Food Group, but the immediate response is required by the state of Hawaii Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Number 2, we want to communicate frequently and positively about safety. Safety is not a negative thing. It doesn't slow us down when we plan ahead and it becomes part of our work process. So as we talk about how to do the job and what our expectations are, those pieces should always have an element of safety included to become a part of our process and the way we do our work. We want to plan for safe production and the safe performance of our work because really how we get the job done is just as important as getting the job done. It matters. We want to be sure activities and work areas are safe, again, for our employees and for our customers. And we want to do what we say we will do. We have written plans, we have this safety management policy statement and management system, and it's really important that we understand what's included and we walk out that process. A lot of these programs are written to make sure we comply with the minimum requirements by law. And so this is very important that we as a team work together to get this accomplished. Everyone's expected to support the safety program with unwavering commitment. That means it's solid. We understand safety, it's a core value. And we sincerely believe that nothing we do is worth getting hurt, and will accept nothing less than production and work performance that's safe and efficient. This is really the bottom line for our program, and really the message we hope that you take home from this orientation today. By law, the employer is responsible to provide an employee a workplace that's free from recognized and predictable hazards. We carry this out through this program, through trainings, through daily observations, through planning our work, and then the employee participates in the program and also provides feedback. What are they observing? What concerns do they have? And then the employer works together with the employee to make sure that those items get corrected and we improve our process. We're always looking to get from good to better with our programs. And it's very important that if you're a supervisor in the organization, you understand that by law, you represent the employer. And so the decisions that you make are decisions on behalf of the employer. And it's really important as an employee in the organization to realize that your employer has this responsibility, and this program is really in place to ensure you get to go home safely to your family every day without injury, without illness. And so again, this really is a cooperative effort by both employer and employee to help make sure we have the best organization possible, we provide the best services to our customers and the public, and we take care of our employees to keep them safe and healthy. This section is going to cover information on how to prevent accidents according to our safety management system. Let's talk a little bit about regulatory requirements. There are regulations and laws that apply to workplace safety and health that cover employees in the United States and employers who have to provide that safe and healthy workplace. So federally, the baseline requirements are set by OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. There are a few states that have their own state-run program. Hawaii is one of those, and our organization is called HIOSH, the Hawaii Occupational Safety and Health Administration. And Hawaii has its own rules that have to be as effective as federal OSHA. Most of Hawaii's rules are directly adopted or the same as federal OSHA, but we do have a few that are specifically different, and so there is a relationship between these two groups. In terms of worker safety and health, there's something called the General Duty Clause. And really, an easy way to think about this requirement is that just because there's not a rule that says you can or can't do something, if it's recognized or predictable that that activity or behavior could cause injury, then a General Duty Clause citation could be issued, and it's kind of a catch-all citation. So that's an important concept to remember. On the right, you'll see two posters. The one on the far right is the federal Job Safety and Health poster, and the one in the middle is the HIOSH poster. The HIOSH poster is required to be posted in all workplaces. Maybe it's in your break room or in the back area, where all employees can see and be reminded of their right to a safe and healthy workplace. So this poster gives you some information about the right to see your medical records, or the requirement for your employer to correct workplace hazards, or your right to not be discriminated against for making safety and health complaints. So one of your challenges after today's orientation, when you get back to your work site, is to go look for the poster and familiarize yourself with its contents. So there's something called a safety culture, and that's really the way we do our work or the way we influence each other to behave. And this is a really important concept. So let's go over a couple things that really establish our expectations for how we do our work and how we influence one another. It's almost likened to a safety attitude. That's another way you could say it. So number one, nothing we do is worth getting hurt. There's no job so critical, so time sensitive that we can't stop for a second, get the right equipment, let's say the right ladder or the right personal protective equipment, and make sure that it gets done safely. Okay? Nothing we do is worth getting hurt. The next is that management's responsible and accountable to prevent injuries and lead this safety and health effort. Who's management? Again, anybody who's in a supervisory role or a role of authority who has decision-making responsibilities. Somebody who can direct a worker to start or stop an activity and has the authority to change how work is done. That's a good way to look at management from a real-life perspective. So responsible and accountable. Everybody's responsible, but when we say accountable, that normally has some negative feelings towards it. And accountability just really means answerable. Somebody has to be in charge. And for TD Food Group, our supervisors out in the field and anybody with management authority is responsible to carry out our policies and help make sure our culture is in place and lead by example. The next bullet point here is a proactive safety program that integrates health and safety into our operations for efficiency. Proactive means we plan ahead. We're not waiting for a hazard to pop up, or we're not waiting for somebody to get hurt to say, gee, we should do something about that. We're looking for and predicting and trying to prevent issues from occurring. And then that means we plan health and safety processes into how we do our work, our operations. And when we talk about efficiency, that just means that we want to do the job the right way the first time, and that definitely means the safe way. In order for us to have a great safety program and take care of all of our employees need to participate. And really, we shouldn't have to say you're required to participate. In a perfect world, everyone would understand and value safety, but we all come from different backgrounds and different experiences. So this really sets the baseline expectation of that we want you to get involved, we want you to understand the safety program, because we all have to watch out for one another. All losses are preventable. We have to believe this. And it is possible to work safely, not have incidents, and to be very effective and efficient in our work. But it takes effort, and it takes a group and a team involvement. And so the mentality is that yes, we can prevent that injury from happening. Yes, we can prevent that property damage from occurring. And that's how we look at our work and how we create a culture or our expectation that we're going to perform our work. And everybody's accountable and responsible for safety at the end of the day. Management first and foremost, but at the end of the day, if I'm working next to you, I'm responsible to make sure if I see something that might cause you to get hurt, to speak up. And I hope that if you're next to me, you would say something to help me to prevent from getting hurt. And that's really what it's about, right? We're answerable for each other and to help each other go home safe. So let's talk a little bit about planning safety into our work. Some of you may do some tasks that have an activity hazard analysis or a job hazard analysis. There's a bunch of different terms for this. But basically, this is a document that records the steps on how to perform a task. It identifies potential hazards associated with each step. And then it has proper controls to prevent you from being hurt at each step. So this is an important tool to help us plan safety into our work, and it's just a process that can be gone through, usually for activities that are one-off or non-routine. So it's important that we have a trained workforce. The occupational safety and health regulations have several training elements that are required. This could be anything from how to wear your personal protective equipment, slip, trip, and fall prevention, safe lifting, proper lighting, how to use a ladder the right way. You get the idea. So lots of different training that's required for our workforce. And ultimately, supervision, again, is accountable for crew's performance and to help make sure everybody has the training and protective equipment that they need. As a refresher, every person is required to report or correct unsafe conditions immediately and provide and use and maintain the personal protective equipment that you're given. So when you're issued PPE, you should be given a safety briefing or a training on how to use it when it's required. You should then use it and maintain it in safe working condition. If something happens and your personal protective equipment is damaged, you should report that immediately so that it can get replaced. And if there's an issue with the fit or operation of your PPE, that should be reported to your supervisor or team leader right away. This next one's really important. Some of the equipment that we use have safety devices. And you may not realize this, but a seatbelt is a safety device. And that's really important that they're worn and used properly, just like a guard on a piece of restaurant equipment that we might use, or any personal protective equipment can also be seen as a safety device. So really important that we're not disabling these and that they're providing us the protection that's intended. Every safety management system is required to have policy and procedure. We already looked at the safety policy statement for TD Food Group, and now we're just going to talk about some of the procedures from a high level. As you go through learning your job and working, your safety team leaders will show you safe procedures and give you further briefings on that as well. Anytime something's repeated, it must be important. And so the requirement to immediately report hazards, and that includes near misses. That's where something went wrong, but nobody got hurt and nothing got damaged. The requirement to report property damage or injury or even illnesses to your supervisors is critical. We need to know what's happening, what needs to be fixed, and it's very important that we have a culture where we can speak freely. Otherwise, if these aren't reported, how do we know to fix them? Next is that alcoholic beverages, illegal drugs, these are strictly prohibited on and around our work areas. There's really zero tolerance for this. We deal with a lot of sharp objects, hot oil, and we're handling people's food, and this is really interfacing with the public, and this is something that's very important to make sure our workers have a clear mind and are fully able to perform their job safely. So no one's permitted to work under the influence, and if this is detected, we have processes that will follow to immediately and safely remove someone, investigate, and follow our disciplinary and no tolerance policies from there. Part of having a safe and healthy workplace involves addressing workplace violence. And workplace violence is really where we have behaviors that threaten, intimidate, or could otherwise harm someone in our workplace. We have a no tolerance policy towards that, and that type of behavior will not be tolerated. That will also result in the immediate removal, investigation, and appropriate disciplinary action according to the no tolerance policy. This also includes weapons, and weapons are not permitted in our workplace. Another process for us to follow is making sure that if you're assigned a job or you're assigning someone a job and they don't have experience with that, or they're unfamiliar with it, or perhaps it's an activity that's not a routine activity, it may be performed only periodically, that supervision and leadership make sure that we don't assume the worker understands, but that we show and we instruct them. And even if we have to refer back to activity hazard analysis or policy or process in our safety management system, that we take the time to make sure we're aware of the safe methods and processes to perform the work so that the worker knows about the hazards and knows how to prevent themselves from being injured due to those hazards, or how to remove the hazards. It's really important for us to have a safe and healthy workforce and workplace. And part of that starts off with understanding the safe processes and rules or requirements, if you will. And remember, all these regulations, the laws, the rules, our processes, these all came from prior experiences and through a learning process. And these get established so that we can not have to repeat the same mistakes over and over each time a new worker joins us to learn that, oh, the oil's hot, or that knife is sharp, or that guard has to be in place, or if you lift that way, you could hurt your back. So we're just trying to know better, do better, if you will. And so it's important to be alert. It's important to follow these safe work practices and really being mindful when we have new team members joining us to watch out for one another and to be helpful and coach and train. All employees, it's important to focus. One of the hardest things to do is to pay attention to detail all day long. But being able to focus on your work and what you're doing and be aware of your surroundings and the processes is super important to making sure you get to go home safely and your coworkers go home safely. So if you see a hazard or an unsafe act, again, please take immediate corrective action or report it to your team leader or your manager so that they can take action. We're going to take a brief overview of our occupational health and safety management system. Key concept in number 1 in our management system is employee participation. This program's for our employees, so your involvement is critical or vital to the effectiveness of our program. So we ask you again to participate in identifying hazards. You may be asked to work on pre-planning an activity and training. We're looking to see visible, consistent commitment to worker safety and health from everyone, and we definitely want feedback on our policies and our processes. How could something be better? How can we make an improvement? Did we miss something? An important part of a safety management system is emergency preparedness. Our main focus is always to prevent injuries, but if one should occur, we really need to be familiar with our response plan for our workplace because literally minutes could matter. So this could include knowing how to call for help, where are the phones located, what numbers should you call, like 911, knowing the address of your location, and knowing exit routes, first aid, and fire extinguisher locations, to name a few. I want to challenge you to go back to your workplace and find your response plan, know all your exit routes and the location of these elements, and mentally think through what would I do if something happened. We will have periodic training and sometimes testing of our emergency plans through drills or other activities, and we focus on doing this at least once a year so that everybody gets a chance to walk through the process to make sure that we can respond appropriately. If an incident does occur, an investigation will be conducted by supervision. They'll be looking to determine what the root cause of the incident is, what helped create that circumstance or behavior, and then putting together a corrective action plan. How do we prevent this from happening again? All this gets investigated and reported on the investigation report form, which is to be completed by the person who conducts the investigation and turned in within 8 hours. In some cases, more than 8 hours may be needed to complete a full investigation, but at least an initial report should be done within that time frame. Programs, policies, and procedures. We hope we never have to issue a disciplinary action for an employee, especially for safety violations. But attached are the individual disciplinary guidelines to be open and honest so that employees understand what types of violations would result in what type of activity. We do have a progressive disciplinary system with first, second, and third offenses. So if you just follow along on the chart, I'll review these very briefly. Anything like filing a fraudulent claim or sticking your hand into the food processor is an immediate termination. And those are things that you should remember. Horseplay, an employee with 2 safety write-ups within 6 months, and lifting dough alone would result in an investigation, suspension, and a second offense of termination. Not using a wizard glove while performing any of the following activities, like using a knife, tomato slicer or corer, using the can opener, removing a filter from the frying hood, or using or cleaning the food processor. First offense could result in written warning, second offense a 2-day suspension, and third offense termination. The same action would apply to not using a back brace in a position requiring frequent lifting, or a manager failing to follow up on a safety rule or practice. Disciplinary guidelines for our delivery drivers are as follows. If the following violations occur either on or off the job, it's a termination for a first offense. And these are pretty serious. Driving under the influence of alcohol or illegal drugs or being in possession of those, leaving the scene of an accident or fleeing a police officer, reckless driving or excessive speeding, a felony using a motor vehicle, possessing firearms or weapons in your vehicle, failure to report an accident regardless of fault or severity, driving without a valid license or insurance, and the use of a radar laser detector will all result in termination. Similar to the individual disciplinary guidelines, drivers have a violations column on the left, and then a progressive disciplinary system of first, second, and third offenses. An immediate termination would also occur if a preventable accident injured a third party. From here, we have progressive first and second offense discipline for failure to check in properly or follow up on a driver safety requirement, failure to train or certify a new driver, a preventable or citable accident, any chargeable moving violation not reported to the GM, any complaint reported to or observed by management for speeding or reckless driving, using an electronic device when driving, eating, smoking, or drinking while driving, having your windows down, your door unlocked, or your engine on at the store or delivery location, the car top not being on or lit after 5 p.m., failure to call a customer before leaving the unit, and carrying more than $20 in change or failure to use the drop box. This is not an all-inclusive list of violations, and it's important to know that the company reserves the right to take disciplinary action up to and including termination for any situation that may occur. The Hazard Communication Law, also commonly referred to as HAZCOM, is designed to communicate the hazards of the chemicals and products that employees use in the workplace and warn them of any safety precautions or personal protective equipment, fire hazard, first aid hazards, and so forth prior to handling the chemical. So your employer has a written program in our safety management system. All products that are purchased and put into the workplace must have labels that contain these warnings, and also something called a safety data sheet. Employees are to receive training on the safety data sheets before their first use of the chemical. And so let's take a look at a sample safety data sheet just to help make you familiar with this product. This is a brief introduction to what a safety data sheet looks like and what it contains. This is a sample safety data sheet for a product called WD-40. Many of you may be familiar with that already. It's a common product we may have in our home and definitely in the workplace. All products must have a safety data sheet that accompanies them when we purchase it. If it's missing, you can go on the internet and in most cases pull off a copy of the safety data sheet. Just be sure that it's a current version. These data sheets contain 16 different sections that contain information about each chemical. This information is required by law. So it will identify the chemical, it'll give the hazard identifications, what the makeup of it is, and several other bits of information like first aid care, what to do in case of a fire, how to store it, and how to dispose of it, to name a few. It's important to know that this is an orientation or a brief introduction to HAZCOM, that every employee must go through a separate HAZCOM training in order to fully understand how to read these labels and safety data sheets. Let's talk about personal protective equipment, or PPE. PPE is issued based on the findings of a hazard assessment. And a hazard assessment is where your employer looks at the activities that get performed in the workplace, the tools, equipment, and chemicals that are used, and they determine, possibly through a hazard analysis, safe work processes, and select personal protective equipment to help keep the worker safe. It should be noted that PPE is always the last option. Hazard assessments are then documented, and workers are then issued the proper PPE to them based on the tasks that they're performing. It should be noted that PPE is to be given at no cost to the employee. However, day-to-day clothing and normal footwear are not considered PPE that the employer has to pay for. Workers are then to be trained on a yearly basis or updated on training if there's changes to the PPE or work processes. Workers get fitted and trained how to wear and maintain the PPE at all times as required based on this hazard assessment. If your PPE is missing, it's damaged, or it's not functioning properly, you should report that immediately so it can either be replaced or corrected. Required PPE in the workplace could include your clothing, work boots or shoes with proper anti-slip material, hand protection, eye and face protection, hearing protection, high visibility clothing, fall protection, and even hard hats for some of our maintenance personnel. Our safety management system also covers respiratory protection. Some employees within our workforce will be required to wear respirators depending on the type of job or chemical that they're working with. In general, this is typically our facilities and maintenance personnel. We do have a respiratory protection program administrator who will ensure that workers who are required to wear respirators have the proper medical clearance, fit test, and training, and then will assist the worker in selecting the proper respirator based on the hazards of the product and type of work being performed. Negative pressure respirators, like the ones that are seen to the left on this slide, the top is a filtering face piece, the bottom is a half mask air purifying respirator. These respirators are required to be sealed tightly to the wearer's face. Because of this means workers who wear these respirators must be clean shaven where the mask touches the face. Workers will also do a positive and a negative fit check each time the respirators put on or adjusted. This is for information only. If you're assigned the use of a respirator, additional training, medical clearance, and fit testing is required. Housekeeping, also known as cleanliness and orderliness, is critical in our workplace, not only for food safety purposes, but also for slip, trip, and fall prevention and the ability to escape out of our facility in the event of an emergency. All employees will be trained on housekeeping requirements and proper methods to dispose of our wastes, and exceptional housekeeping is really a priority for us at all of our facilities. We ask that all employees help us plan our daily activities to include the proper storage of materials, maintaining clear and free walk spaces, and frequent cleanup of our work areas. Please help ensure trash removal is performed on a regular basis. Some of our workplaces may have powered industrial trucks, also known as forklift or powered pallet jacks. Anybody who's operating a powered industrial truck must complete training and hands-on examination to become certified. This training can only be conducted by a qualified instructor. Once certified, the operator is responsible for daily pre-use inspection of the equipment, and supervision is to observe the operators to ensure safe operations. Many of us will be required to use some type of tool or equipment in our job. Please be sure to complete training on that tool or equipment prior to your first use, and always follow the manufacturer's safe use requirements. This could include wearing required personal protective equipment. Electrical safety is important for all employees. If you've been assigned a piece of equipment or a tool that's operated electrically, you should have been trained on how to inspect it and safely use it. Some types of electrical safety devices you may find in the workplace include a ground fault circuit interrupter, also known as a GFCI. This can be seen in the photo to the far right. This is a device that measures the amount of electricity coming in and going out of the system. A difference between 5 to 7 milliamps will trip this system in 1/40th of a second. This is designed for people safety. The plug and cord set in the photo to the left contains insulation over the electrical internal wires and a ground pin. These are also safety devices. Missing ground pins, frayed or cut cords, or any other damage requires that equipment or tool to be immediately removed from service and reported to a supervisor. Do not open electrical panels or throw circuit breakers or touch exposed electrical live parts unless you're trained and qualified to do so. Lockout Tagout's a program designed to control the unplanned sudden release of hazardous energy. This typically applies to workers within our facilities and maintenance group, or anyone cleaning a piece of machinery where it has to be shut down. A lock and tag are applied, and this prevents anyone from accidentally starting up the machinery while it's being worked on or cleaned. Keys to locks may only be in the possession of the person who applied the lock and is performing the work. All lockout tagout devices must include a lock and a tag. The tag must contain the name of the individual working on the system and preferably a phone number that they can be contacted with if they're not in the immediate area. This activity requires additional training. There are two types of fall exposures in the workplace. Falls to a lower level, which are protected by devices like this fall protection harness shown in the photo. We should always be looking at our workplace to see when we'll be working in an elevated area. That means when are our feet off the ground. Appropriate protection has to be provided at exposures of 4 feet or more. There are various methods that are used to protect employees in the workplace, whether you're working on a ladder, a scaffold, or on the roof. Most employees in our workplace who may use this type of equipment will be within the facilities and maintenance group. All equipment, all training, and all plans must be completed by a competent person, and additional training is required. Fall protection for falls to the same level, also known as slip-trip fall, could include non-slip mats like the one shown in this photo, slip-resistant shoes, and clean floors, keeping water and slippery materials off the surface. Ladders are a really common piece of equipment and very useful in our workplace. However, they do have a significant fall hazard associated with them. All employees must receive training on the safe use of a ladder. But here's a couple important things for you to know. Number one, we should select the right ladder for the job and make sure it's the proper size and proper type. You can find this information through the manufacturer's literature, and on the side of the ladders there should be 2 very important labels. One that tells you the maximum load capacity, how much weight can the ladder support, and one that tells you the safe use instructions. Ladders must be inspected prior to each use. They may not be used if they're damaged or defective. Anything that's damaged or defective must be tagged and removed from the workplace immediately, and be sure to notify your supervisor. Step ladders must be used in the fully open position, never closed and leaning against the wall as if it was an extension ladder. Do not use the top rung of a step ladder or the second to the top rung of an extension ladder. All ladders will have a warning sticker on it that says danger, do not step above this step. This is important. That's the balance point or tipping point of the ladder. If you go above that step, you increase the potential of your fall from that ladder. Please be sure you get additional training before using this equipment. Your workplace may contain some confined spaces. Confined spaces are identified as spaces that are large enough to bodily enter, have limited exit and entry, and aren't designed for continuous human occupancy. Some examples might be a manhole. Entry into these spaces requires competent person oversight, a written plan, and additional training. As a note, the walk-in freezer is not considered a confined space. This brings us to the end of our orientation. Remember, this is an introductory overview to our occupational health safety management system. You're very important to us as an employee, and we want to see you be safe at our workplace so you can go home safely to your families. Please participate and follow up in additional on-the-job training that will be provided to you. Be sure and ask questions and make sure you understand the hazards and how to protect yourself and others. Your safety and the safety of our customers is our top priority. Your voice is important and what you see matters. Please report your concerns or observations to supervision immediately, and we look forward to working with you. If you have any questions about this orientation or anything that wasn't included in this orientation, please reach out to your supervisor for a follow-up, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you and welcome to the team.